This water sampling SOP is provided by Sabel Environmental Solutions. Here is a list of some of the items required for this SOP. It includes 8 10-ounce glass jars with screw-tight lids, logbook, labels, chain of custody records and custody seals, cooler, ice pack, deionized water, a dipper, a bag, pins, gloves, a safety vest, and something to time. It's very important that all members involved in the sampling effort are wearing the proper PPE. Closed-toed shoes, a vest, gloves, and goggles are key to keeping every person safe. Here, Jay also has the dipper. As part of preparation for your water sampling, you should first determine the extent of the sampling effort, the sampling methods to be employed, and the types and amounts of equipment and supplies needed. Then obtain the necessary sampling and monitoring equipment. Then decontaminate or pre-clean equipment and ensure that it is in working order. Prepare scheduling and coordinate with staff, clients, and regulatory agency if appropriate. Perform a general site survey prior to site entry in accordance with the site-specific health and safety plan. And finally, mark a sampling location where the flow rate is the greatest. 4 grab samples need to be taken. All 4 samples will be taken from the same place at different time intervals, which is why it is key that you find a spot with the highest flow rate. Before you collect your first sample, use a random number generator to generate 3 separate numbers. The numbers correspond to the number of seconds between grab sample 1 and 2, grab sample 2 and 3, and grab sample 3 and 4, respectively. For example, if the first random number is 45, you will wait 45 seconds between collection of grab sample 1 and grab sample 2. It is also important to choose a sampling location where the water is flowing and not stagnant to ensure that your sample will be representative of the water body. Before you take each grab sample, you should test the water for pH, total dissolved solids, and salinity, as is demonstrated in the video shown here. Now it is time to take your first grab sample. Place the dipper into the location you determined had the highest flow rate. Be careful not to disturb the sediment on the floor of the water body when doing so. Once you fill the dipper, you can then move the sample into one of your glass containers. Once your sample is in the container, make sure the lid is screwed on tightly and that all the correct labels are placed on the sample container. This is how the process should look. As mentioned before, be careful not to disturb sediment when using the dipper. Repeat this process 4 times so that you have 4 grab samples. QA/QC measures are also important for this sampling effort. All data must be documented on field data sheets or within site logbooks. All instrumentation must be operated in accordance with operating instructions as supplied by the manufacturer, unless otherwise specified in the work plan. Equipment checkout and calibration activities must occur prior to sampling and operation, and they must be documented. You also need to conduct 2 QA/QC samples for this sampling effort. The first is a split duplicate sample, which can be done by taking one of your grab samples, such as the 4th one, and splitting half of it into another sample container, as demonstrated here. The second QA/QC sample should be a rinsate sample, which is done by washing the equipment used, such as the dipper and deionized water, and then pouring that rinsate into a container to be tested in the lab. Once you have done this, you should have all 6 samples that you collected in your cooler properly labeled. Before you close your cooler, be sure to place an ice pack on top of your samples as a means of preserving them. Your cooler should then be shut and sealed with a custody seal, as shown here. As a reminder, after you've collected each sample, you should transfer the sample into a suitable labeled sample container, preserve the sample if appropriate, or use pre-preserved sample bottles, record all pertinent data in the site logbook and on field data sheets, complete the chain of custody record, attach custody seals to cooler prior to shipment, and decontaminate all sampling equipment prior to the collection of additional samples with that sampling device.